All right. Good evening, everybody, and welcome back to the other side of Rock Bottom, where we talk all things recovery, healing, and hope. I'm your host, Kathy, and I'm grateful you're here with us tonight. If you haven't already, be sure to follow this page and subscribe so you don't miss any of our powerful conversations. Tonight, I'm sitting down with someone whose story is nothing short of incredible. She's a fighter, a survivor, and someone who's not afraid to tell the truth about what it takes to heal. Please help me welcome my guest, Jessica. Good evening, Jess.
Hey, so
Thank
happy to be here.
thank you for being here, for being willing to share your truth. I know someone watching tonight is going to see themselves in your story. So let's start at the beginning, kiddo. Tell us a little bit about what life was like growing up for you.
Sure. Growing up, my life was a mix of good moments and challenges. On the outside, things might have looked pretty normal, but inside our home and inside myself, there was a lot that I didn't understand at the time. There were moments of love and connection, but also quite a bit of instability, uncertainty, and emotional struggles that I didn't have the tools to process as a child. I learned very early on how to hide my feelings, put on a mask. That felt safer than being vulnerable or speaking up for myself. And I didn't realize it then, but those patterns and keeping things bottled up, looking for ways to escape discomfort, laid the groundwork for some of the struggles I'd face later in life. But at the same time, those seeds that were planted definitely, can also equate to resilience that I have today. And because even though it was difficult, I found ways to adapt and keep moving forward.
All right. So, did you have any early exposure to trauma, mental health struggles, or addiction?
Yes, I experienced all of the above trauma, addiction, and mental health struggles from a very young age. My stepdad was abusive towards both my mom and I for years. My biological dad was very in and out of my life, very inconsistent. And he also struggled with addiction to drugs and alcohol, so I had abandonment issues there. When it came to mental health, I grew up being told that there was something wrong with me, that I was broken. I was given diagnosis after diagnosis, prescribed medications, placed in therapy throughout my childhood. As a teenager, when things escalated and I started to kind of stand up for myself and stand up for my mom when it came to my stepdad's ways, I did end up in the system, juvenile, foster care, group homes, because my mom said that she just didn't know what else to do. In reality, I was acting out as a reaction to my environment. I just wanted to protect my mom. And when she wouldn't allow that, I became very resentful toward her as well. And it became a very toxic situation. There were other events in my childhood that could be seen as indicators of mental health issues, but looking back, I'm still unsure whether those behaviors were truly a disorder or simply the natural response of a young person living through trauma.
Wow. Okay. So, when did substances first enter your life?
I started drinking in high school, mostly on the weekends. I had good grades. I thought, I'm not one that is going to have sex while I'm still in school. My mom had me very young. So I had made that choice, and I'd watched my mom go through a lot of different toxic relationships. I really didn't want anything to do with men. And so I looked at it as, as long as I'm not being promiscuous and I'm not doing drugs, I can drink with my friends on the weekend and it's okay. I kept my grades up, like I said. But from the very beginning of drinking, I noticed how much that I loved the way that it made me feel, or, how much I love not having to feel. Alcohol gave me a sense of courage and confidence I didn't have before. It allowed me to be silly, to have fun, and to show parts of my personality that I had kept hidden for a very long time. Growing up, I was always told things like I was too much or I was a drama queen. I was always being told I needed to calm down. So I learned to, as I said in the beginning, push parts of myself deep down to avoid judgment and rejection. But when I was drinking, all the walls came down and I felt like I could be the real me without fear. And that feeling became something that I chased. And I continued to drink all 4 years of high school.
Oh, wow. Okay. So what role did they play in helping you cope or escape?
Alcohol was, I looked forward to the weekends. It was my escape. It numbed all the pain, the confusion, the anger I was carrying from my past. It gave me a break from the constant mental chatter and the heaviness of my emotions. When I drank, I didn't have to think about any of the trauma I'd experienced, any of the instability at home. I lived with my grandfather, my papa, my mom's dad, all through high school. And as long as I kept my grades up and I wasn't exhibiting any signs of instability in school, he let me do what I wanted on the weekends. And so that's what I chose to do. I had a lot of feelings of not being enough, of just being a burden. And I didn't feel that way when I was drinking. It wasn't just about having fun, it became about finding relief. It became a way to turn down the volume on everything that I didn't want to face. The abandonment issues from my mom, not being able to be a part of my little brother's life because my mom did end up having another child with my stepdad. All of those things were very painful for me. And all of the trauma that I had from the institutions that I had been in, I was able to just drown them out and run from them by drinking. I didn't realize it at the time, but every time I reached for that alcohol, I was reinforcing the idea that I couldn't handle life without it. Um, so,
All right. Was there a specific point when you felt like things were starting to spiral out of control?
so it was long after high school that it got to that point. After graduation, I did start smoking weed. I did start spending time with people who were using hallucinogens. I began traveling, experimenting with mushrooms, LSD, ecstasy, and going to music festivals. And for a period of time, I did pain pills. This was all between the ages of 19 and 21. And like I said, I was traveling with a group of individuals that were all quite a bit older than me. They took me under their wing, so to speak, and taught me how to hustle drugs and taught me how to have a lot of fun as I saw it back then at these music festivals. I loved music. My dad was a musician, so it really reeled me in. And in that world, I felt a sense of belonging that I had never experienced before. I felt free and accepted and like I was finally part of something. Um, these were people that stood up against, drugs like heroin and meth, and they were very, very against having any of that on any of the lots. And I knew those were drugs my dad struggled with, so I related to that and made me feel validated there as well. And so again, I didn't realize what all of those substances that I was doing were doing to my brain because they weren't good either, of course. So, you know, um, I guess to answer your question, get skipping forward into the future. After I did all that traveling, I came back home because my dad's mom, my grandma, got sick, and I wanted to be with her. And around that time is when I settled down with one of the people from the crew that I had been running with. And I let him know my feelings for him, and he reciprocated. And shortly thereafter, we were pregnant with our daughter Aurora. Um, I threw myself into a solid job, working 60 hours a week. While he stayed home with her, I wanted my daughter to have a dad because I never had that. What I didn't realize was how much it was hurting me to miss so much time with my daughter. And
Mhm.
instead of processing those feelings, I shoved them down. I went back to the drinking, going to the bar every night, driving home drunk. I relapsed on pain pills because I was misdiagnosed earlier on in my journey with something, and they put me on pain pills from the surgery that I had that I didn't even need. And that's when everything truly began spiraling. My relationship fell apart. I got an eviction notice. My family was trying to take my daughter from me. My whole world was crumbling. I began using methamphetamines. I entered a toxic relationship with someone who was also an alcoholic and a musician. I joined a band with him together. We drank, we used speed, we took pain pills. And during this time, I still had my daughter. People around me could tell that the life I was living was unsafe for a child, and I knew they knew that. So instead of recognizing that and making a change, I ran away and I took my daughter moved here to Kentucky where I now live, and that's where I got myself into a whole new level of trouble. Um, so I'd say the long and short of it is when I started using methamphetamine on top of everything else, that's when it really started to spiral out of control.
So what did rock bottom look like for you?
Mm. So I knew that that was going to be one of the questions, and I have had so many different rock bottoms, right, on this journey. Um, but the one that was the worst was when my daughter was finally removed from my care. When I got to Kentucky, my using escalated even more. I no longer had any stability, bouncing from couch to couch, no healthy relationship, no boundaries. I was surrounded by people who were using just as much as I was, and I felt completely consumed by addiction. The legal trouble started piling up. It was during COVID, so they would like catch and release me. They would pick me up, arrest me, and then release me right away, and then give me a court date. And so I was facing all these charges, constantly on the run, trying to dodge the consequences. My health was deteriorating. My mind was a mess. My body was exhausted. My spirit was completely broken. And I had completely lost the essence of who I was. And so that lowest point came when I realized that I was no longer able to protect my daughter from the chaos I was creating. There was no more pretending things were fine. People could see it, and deep down, so could I. Even the drug addicts that I was hanging out with were judging me for having my daughter, and they wanted her safe, and they were contacting my family, telling them where I was, and so I could never sit still, because I knew that they were doing that. Um, and so anyway, I ended up getting actually arrested and locked up in Alabama. And that's when this was in 2018. That's when my mom came and got Aurora. And I remember being walked from the jail to the courthouse across the street where I had in shackles and handcuffs, where I had to sign over temporary guardianship to my daughter, of my daughter to my mom. And that pain in that moment, that was the rock bottom that I remember most.
Wow. Okay. I was gonna say, what did you lose? But you lost a lot, huh?
Yeah, everything, everything.
Hmm. So, let's talk about your turning point there, my friend. What moment of clarity, what was your moment of clarity? What made you surrender? What happened that finally made you say, I just can't do this shit no more?
That particular jail instance was the first time I'd actually been incarcerated for any length of time. I was there for 90 days, which isn't long, but for a first time in a jail that was, far, far from home, and I was very alone, it was a long time for me. I was in isolation for most of it. And I actually had a spiritual awakening in the isolation cell when I was having a mental breakdown. And God spoke to me audibly for one of the only times in my life and said to me, they have to give you a Bible. And I heard it loud and clear. And it was twice, because I questioned it the first time, like, am I still high? Was that a hallucination? But I had no way of knowing that. I'd never been to jail. And so I didn't know that they have to give you a Bible. And so I kicked the door until they brought me one. And I opened it and I started reading it, and it was speaking exactly to my situation, different verses in Psalms, specifically just where David is crying out to the Lord from his prison cell, and he is, asking to be protected. And the epiphany that I had in that moment was that God put me in that cell to protect me from myself. And when I realized that, it was a peace that came over me. And I looked down at the ground, at the concrete, and someone had somehow etched the words, Jesus loves you, right where my feet were. And I knew in that moment that Jesus had found me. People say I found God, but Jesus found me, God found me. And uh, I got baptized. I was the one of the first. I was in the first group of people to ever get baptized and get that approved at that jail. We went right across the street to the church and got baptized. And I got released, and the church paid for my Greyhound ticket back home to Indiana. And I thought, well, I'll be accepted back home. I'm better. I've learned my lesson. I'm scared straight, so to speak. Um, And when I got home, nobody wanted me there. My mom wouldn't let me see my daughter. She wouldn't even let me speak to her on the phone. She wanted me to go to treatment, and I relapsed. So that was the first time that I realized I'd had enough. And I really, truly, with everything in my soul, wanted a better way of life. But what I found out even just recently and telling that story to one of my sponsees and going through the steps with her through the Life Recovery Bible was that I believed with everything in me that God was real, but I didn't yet have the faith to completely surrender in those moments when they would not accept me. I didn't have enough faith to say, okay, this is God's plan, you know, and go into treatment. So I hope that answers your question for the first
Okay.
time
All right.
anyway.
Well, so now let's continue on that journey. You went into treatment. What was next?
So I actually, after that relapse, when I relapsed, I spent the next 7 months racking up 23 felonies in 5 different states when they wouldn't let me see my daughter. And again, it was a situation where it was just catch and release, catch and release. I didn't have any violent crimes, nothing. It was all low level stuff, felonies. And so they wanted to do with me. And except just to keep setting me loose. And so 23 felonies in 5 different states. And I finally landed myself here in Warren County where they got me. I was just passing through and they got me and I sat down for over 2 years. I thought 2 years was going to be it, that I would get out, go on probation, but I had a tangled mess. I had to go to Tennessee and handle things. I had to go, um, I still have open cases in Alabama and Indiana today that I'm sifting through. And I am, I've been sober since 2021, if that tells you anything. But they did order me to treatment. They ordered me to a faith-based program. That was the best thing that ever happened to me. It was the most beautiful experience I have ever had. Um, those ladies love me back to life. That program loved me back to life.
What
And
program?
it's Hope House here in Bowling Green, for women. Yeah.
All right.
I did 8 months in sober living as well, at 2 different sober living homes. That really, really helped me to re-enter society as well.
Okay. What were some of the biggest challenges you faced early on in recovery?
Still, number one is going to be not having my daughter. Coming out into the free world and having no earthly idea when I was going to be able to get her back was hell. Knowing that my mom was back home dealing with my papa, who now had dementia and Parkinson's, and she was also having to take care of my 7-year-old at that time. And I had no way of helping. I had to stay put, right? Not wanting, fighting the urge to go back there was hard, really, really hard. Next to that, I would say another struggle would have been just staying humble, um, making sure to, take suggestions, find a sponsor, all that kind of stuff. Continue my therapy. Uh, yeah.
Okay. So recovery isn't just about not using. It's about healing everything we tried to do. What were some things that you had to face in order to heal?
Healing was not pretty. It was not easy. Um, it required me to face a lot of difficult truths about myself and my past. I had to confront the trauma and the pain that I had buried for so long, the abuse, the loss, the feelings of abandonment, all those things I talked about earlier. It meant getting really honest about how those experiences shaped my thoughts and my behaviors and my addiction. I also had to take responsibility for the choices I made and the consequences that came with them. I'm still cleaning up the wreckage of my past and the people that I've hurt, and new amends come up probably every once a month that I realize, hey, I need to go back and try to fix that. And that's a part of my healing process. You know, taking full responsibility for those choices and the consequences that came with them without blaming anyone else. That was incredibly hard, but necessary for healing. Learning to forgive, not just others, but myself first and
That
foremost.
was my next
Letting go of,
question. How did you
yeah,
do that?
yeah, letting go of the shame and guilt. That was the hardest part of the healing journey for me because I was really stuck in that. Even into probably the second year of sobriety, I was still stuck in that. I would find myself in the rooms of AA asking, like, how the hell are all these people so happy and peaceful? None of us have the right, look at, we're terrible, and I would have those feelings still creep up. But I had to develop new tools and ways of coping. Finding the Helping Evolve Recovery support system really, really helped me with that. Finding the right therapist and the right type of therapy really helped me with that. Just maintaining a mindfulness attitude, right? As often as possible, embracing my spirituality, practicing self-care, and just learning those healthier ways to manage stress. Um, but in the interest of forgiveness, like I said, it was one of the most challenging parts. So I carried so much anger and resentment towards myself, more than anybody else. And once I understood that holding on to that anger was like carrying a heavy weight that kept me stuck in the pain, I realized that forgiveness wasn't about excusing the harm done or forgetting the past. It wasn't like I was, giving myself a pat on the back and saying, it's okay, everything you done, it's okay. No, it was freeing myself from the burden itself, from those chains, um, recognizing that I was doing the best I could with what I knew at the time. And that opened the door to gradually forgiving others, realizing my parents, they were just doing the best they could with what they knew. Not that I'm condoning their actions, but by choosing to release that grip, just a little bit at a time, the grip that those wounds had on my heart. It was messy. It took a long time, but with time and patience and guidance from my higher power, forgiveness has become one of the most powerful parts of my recovery and my peace.
So, what inner work changed your life the most?
Um, Learning to embrace honesty and vulnerability, first with myself and then with others. I had been hiding behind all those masks I talked about, pretending I was okay, hiding my pain, avoiding all the uncomfortable truths, and just I was like really good at putting on a mask for whatever situation I needed to that fit whatever situation I was walking into. And in the madness and in early sobriety. And so when I finally allowed myself to be truly honest about my struggles, my fears, it was like a door opened. I could start to see where the real healing could begin. Being vulnerable was not easy. I still struggle with it, because it means risking judgment. It means risking rejection, and those abandonment issues run deep. Um, but it also allowed me to build authentic connections and accept the support that I desperately needed. And I can continue to do that daily. Um, Alongside that, self-compassion changed everything for me. Learning to love myself instead of beating myself up for my mistakes. Learning to treat myself with the same kindness that I would offer you or any other friend in my life. Um, it really helped me move from shame and self-judgment into hope and growth. So that combination, the honesty, vulnerability, and compassion, that's the foundation for all the other changes in my recovery.
Okay. Well, I have the benefit of knowing you personally. And I also know that you just walked through a very tough chapter in your journey earlier this year. You want to talk about that?
Mm. We can, yeah. Yeah, I lost my dad in January. Um, and it was the hardest thing I've had to deal with in recovery. Because he didn't just pass away. It was a 3-week long event, where I was in charge of taking him off of life support from states away. My family was highly upset that my dad put me in charge of that. So I'm still dealing with resentment from my siblings and other family members. Um, Without the assistance of Helping Evolve Recovery and the women on that group, I would have relapsed and I probably wouldn't have made it back through that situation. I cannot, words cannot explain how important every single day that group was to me in my life. And being able to log on to those meetings and just be raw and cry it out and get feedback and the reminders that I was doing the right thing by my dad. And, you know, I just couldn't have made it through without that. Um, Life is very different without my dad. Some days it's a lot heavier than others, but because of all of those, because of that foundation I spoke of, and because I know that my dad would be so proud of me, is so proud of me, and had the opportunity to see me doing better. I got to go and see him, and spend quality time with him before he passed away. That's what helps me get through it day to day. I have a wonderful husband that helps me cope. He understands the grief of losing a parent. He lost his dad when he was 10. And so that's definitely helps a lot too.
Okay, well, you mentioned Helping Evolve Recovery, which that's a support group I too, we all are a part of. What other tools and support systems that made a big difference in your recovery?
My job, I work as a peer support specialist, and I help other people, every day to get on track, and walk this path. I at the very least I can let them know that they're not alone and just sit there and listen to them, and that's huge in my recovery. I spoke about AA. Celebrate Recovery is a huge cornerstone of my recovery journey. It's where I met my husband. It's where I met most of the friends that I have. I continue to go every week. I've been going there for, well, coming up on 4 years now. Um, my mom is a huge support to me. She's struggling right now, so it's more flip-flopped, but she is my biggest cheerleader. My daughter is too. I now have her back in my life. She lives with me, and my husband and I are doing our best to raise her. Therapy, I'm heavy on trauma therapy, once a week religiously. And we do go to church every Sunday and Wednesday. It's a constant, there's no breaks. It's if I'm not out doing something for my recovery, I'm home doing something for my recovery. And that's just the way it is. I wouldn't have it any other way.
Girl, you have walked through the fire and you're still standing. What does it look like now on the other side of rock bottom?
Today, my life looks completely different. I have built that foundation of recovery, faith, and self-awareness that guides me every day. Like I said, I'm in a stable home with my daughter, and we're rebuilding our relationship, one day at a time, with love, trust, and patience. I am engaged in all of those ongoing healing journeys, whether that's through therapy, support groups, spiritual practices. And I've learned to really prioritize my mental and emotional health,
Yeah.
because the mental and emotional relapse always comes before the substance use for me. So I'm really heavy on that, man, in any way that I can. And I found purpose in helping others who are struggling, using my story to inspire hope and change. And I pray that this interview will do that as well. I still face challenges. I'm only human. Life is going to happen. Life be lifing, as we say. But I no longer feel controlled by my past or my addiction. It does not define who I am. I'm empowered by the progress that I've made and hopeful about the future. And recovery is not a destination, but a daily journey. And today I'm grateful to be walking that path with strength and resilience.
I have a question for you. What would the you from your rock bottom say if she could see the you today?
What took you so long? That's the short answer, but no. If the me from rock bottom could see me now, I think she would be surprised, maybe even a little amazed. She would see someone who survived the darkest moments, who faced the pain and didn't give up, even when it felt impossible. I know that she would feel proud of the progress that I've made, the strength that I've found to keep going, and the love that I've been able to rebuild with my daughter and myself and my husband. She would see that the brokenness that she felt wasn't the end of the story, that healing, hope, and purpose were possible. I imagine that she'd tell me to keep going and to hold on to that hope because the journey's worth it.
Jessica, I always end the show by asking this. What message would you give to the person out there right now who's still struggling? The person who believes they can't change or they're not worthy or worth it?
I would want them to know that they're not alone, first and foremost. I've been there, thousands of people have been there, and I understand how heavy that hopelessness feels. I can still feel that hopelessness, even almost 4 years into sobriety. I feel it like it was yesterday, and I don't have to try very hard when I think about it. But I am living proof that change is possible, no matter how far down you've gone or how impossible it seems right now. Recovery isn't about being perfect or having all the answers. It's just not. It's about taking one small step forward, one day at a time, and showing up for yourself even when it's hard, and being willing to ask for help. There is hope for you waiting on the other side of that struggle. If you're struggling right now, please know that there is hope. It's never over till it's over. Your pain does not define you, and your past does not have to be your future. You're worthy of healing, love, and a better life. And with patience and support, you can get there. So please don't give up on yourself. The journey's hard, but it's worth every step.
Honey, that was beautiful. Thank you so much for being here, for being real, and for sharing your beautiful light. You're a living, breathing example of what it means to fight for your life and win. Guys, if tonight's conversation has moved you, please don't keep it to yourself. Like, comment, and share this video. You never know who might need to hear Jessica's story. And don't forget to follow this page and check out the other episodes of The Other Side of Rock Bottom. We're in this together, healing one story at a time. Jessica, again, thank you, my friend.
Thank you so much, Miss Kathy. I love you.
Are you terrified to face tomorrow? Some mornings feel impossible. But even in the darkest moments, hope is closer than you think. You're not alone. There's hope. Written by Kathy Simmons, a certified recovery coach, Welcome to Recovery is your powerful guide to reclaiming your life. With real stories, practical tools, and compassionate insight, this book lights the way, one page at a time. Whether you're beginning, recommitting, or supporting someone through recovery, find hope, clarity, and strength within these pages. Step into your new chapter. Welcome to Recovery. Take the first step. Get your copy of Welcome to Recovery today and begin your journey to hope.